Hello, is anybody there? Today I'm painting Bergamot, Halfling Scout by Bobby Jackson, and he is in the dark. This will be my first attempt at painting a miniature with object source lighting. I start by trimming the mold lines off of the miniature, there aren't very many, and mounting it to a cork so I can hold on to it, then basing the whole thing in black. If this little guy was really in the dark, I would be done at this point. But he is in the moonlight and is holding a lantern. To show the glow of moonlight on Bergamot's back, I mixed a little bit of blue with a lot of black and started to highlight the places where moonlight would fall on his back. Add a few more layers of successively brighter paint, that is, paint that contains less black. I'm trying to add this brighter paint where the moonlight will shine most brightly, that is, on areas that face the moon. To do this, I have to imagine where the moon is compared to Bergamot. In this case, I've decided that the moon is almost directly above him, but slightly behind. Though I imagine that the color will be almost invisible to a normal eye in this dim of light, I am adding a little bit of the color of his cloak to the blue and black mixture to add the last highlights so that there is a hint of the color of the cloak. I do the same with the glove, adding a little bit of red. It's going to be a red glove. The lantern and the tip of Bergamot's scabbard are both metal and illuminated only by the moonlight, not the lantern. I add a little bit of brighter blue to give the idea of a metallic sheen. I'm going to spend most of my time working on the light that the lantern casts onto Bergamot. Perhaps because I am so timid about this project, I've started with an almost black mixture of red and black to line out where the lantern light will fall on the figure. I've added quite a bit more red to this second layer. All of this time I'm trying to visualize where the light will be cast from the lantern to the figure. It feels strange to add the most paint to the recesses that would normally have the darkest shadows, but that is where the light shines. I'm adding more and more yellow and making the paint lighter and lighter as I get closer and closer to the light source. With each subsequently brighter layer of paint, I'm also painting the windows in the lantern so that the light that shines from the lantern is at least as bright as the brightest point elsewhere on the miniature. As I work my way from black through red to orange and then to yellow, I'm not worrying at all about the underlying colors, at least not yet. Eventually, I plan to add some colors for the shirt and face for this fellow, but at this point I'm just sticking with the glow from the lantern. clothings are getting really bright with the addition of yellow. Only the lantern gets white. The glove is the closest part of the character to the lantern and is a red glove, but only part of the glove is illuminated. Give these clothings color that is appropriately shaded, I add a very thin layer or a glaze of paint of the appropriate color to each garment. That way it will show up where the paint is already light and only give a slight hint where it is fairly dark. I've gone really overboard with that green and I'll have to fix it. And I'm done with painting the figure aside from slight touch-ups, so it's time to put it on a base. Our region of Alaska suffered from many wildfires last year, and there are cottonwoods that have died and fallen, leaving behind their bark. The bark has wonderful layers that give it the appearance of sedimentary rock. I'm going to pin the miniature to the base and also use this as a chance to give a little bit more strength to that leg that I broke off earlier. This pin may be uncomfortable, but it'll keep your leg stable while it heals. Tip of my tube of glue clogged, so I used a pin and punctured the tube so I can get glue out the side. Right, so I'm in the dark and the land around me is all light. Oh, that's much better, thank you. I like the idea of a Dungeons & Dragons campaign that takes place primarily in the dark. One of the problems I see with this is that only a few character races don't have the ability to see in the dark. I think it'd be interesting to adjust the rules for a campaign so that darkness becomes a real hazard for all characters. I think a lot of the action that takes place in a campaign should take place in the dark, and for that reason I'm going to paint a whole series of miniatures in the dark and with object source lighting so that I learn the technique better and so that I have lots of miniatures to draw on when I run a campaign like that. I've left a ring of darkness at the center of the base to show the shadow of the lantern. The brightest orange shed by the lantern will be directly outside of that shadow. The rock, like the character, is illuminated by moonlight from behind. One interesting difference between moonlight, which is shed from far away, and from lantern light, which is shed nearby, is that the light dissipates more slowly from a more distant object. So the moon, being very distant, will shed light evenly at pretty much every distance in the scope of a miniature, but the lantern light will dim rapidly as the distance from the lantern increases. Thinking about all of the shadows and glints that are cast by this lantern is one of the most fun things about painting a miniature like this. I've actually enjoyed painting the base as much or more than painting the miniature itself. I like the idea of this little fellow traveling along through the dark, watching out for steep places in the rock where he could stumble and fall, and also watching out for what kind of creatures might be traveling through the darkness. I think that for the next figure that I try to paint with object source lighting, I will not try to show the color of the clothing in the lantern light, and instead just use the red, orange, yellow, white transition as the light grows brighter. I would like to work more on figuring out how creatures that are not carrying their own illumination should be lit for this kind of environment so that I can have them interact with each other. Thank you for watching as I learn how to paint object source lighting. Now all that is left to discover is whether it is friend or foe that Bergamot will find in the dark. Where are you? I heard you there. Come out. Come out.